Hello students, we will start a new chapter on the bending stresses in the simple beam. In the previous lectures we have already studied about the bending moment and shear force and how to obtain the values of bending moment and shear force at different position of the length of the beam, along the length of the beam, and also to draw the bending moment and shear force diagram. Now in this case we are going to talk about the simple bending or pure bending case, so there will not be any shear force present here in this case. The bending moment that is being applied on the beam, it will set up the internal stresses into the material of the beam, which will resist the bending. Okay, so then the process of this bending will continue till the time there is enough resistance set up against the bending moment. So this bending will stop when every cross section will set up the full resistance to the bending moment. This resistance, which is offered by the internal stresses to the bending, they are basically termed as bending stress. So bending stress is nothing but the internal resistance offered by the beam material to the applied bending moment. Now before going and deriving the relation for the bending moment and bending stress relation, we need to first understand the assumptions that we are going to involve in this derivation. So the first assumption is that the material of the beam is perfectly homogeneous and isotropic. What does it mean? That the material throughout the beam, along the length and along its other transverse dimensions, it is completely homogeneous. It has got same density and the material properties. Besides, it is isotropic. That means the property of the material doesn't vary as per the direction. That means along the x, y and z, all three directions, the material properties like such as modulus of elasticity will remain the same. The second assumption that we have here is that the material of the beam is stressed within the elastic limit. So we have seen the stress strain curve, and we know that if we load the material till to the elastic point, after the removal of the load, the material will revert back to its original position, and for this particular, up to this particular juncture, the stress remains proportional to strain and obeys the Fock's law. So it has been assumed that the material of the beam is stressed within the elastic limit. The third is that the transverse sections which were plane before the bending remains plane and normal after the bending. What does it mean? That means if suppose a beam is of circular section, it will remain circular at each cross section as before after the bending. Or the beam is suppose a square section, it will remain square after the bending. It is not going to get deformed to a, let's say, a trapezoidal shape or any other shape. So that section will remain plane and normal after the bending. Now the next assumption is that each layer of the beam is free to expand or contract independently of the layer above or below it. And the next one is that the value of modulus of elasticity is same in tension or compression. And the last one is that the beam is in equilibrium. That means there is no resultant pull or push in the beam section. Now let's understand the theory of simple bending. What you see here in this figure is a portion of a beam which is shown. This beam might be having any kind of a boundary condition, let's say simply supported beam boundary condition, and we have taken a small elemental length dx of that length L of the beam, and we are trying to analyze the situation over here. And we look at that the left section is given by AB and the right section of this element is given by CD. Now this moment, the moment that is being applied is shown here as M, which is trying to bend this beam, and because of this applied bending moment, this elemental length of the beam will take the shape, let's say, like a circular. Because this elemental length dx is very small, we can assume that this is a perfectly circular shape that is obtained after the deformation of the beam because of the applied bending moment M. Now because of this, the top element or the top fiber of the beam element AC will get into the shape of this semicircular, this type of circular arc, and it will get reduced in the length. So our here AC is greater than the deformed shape A dash C dash. It is bigger in length, smaller in length after deformation. Similarly, the next, if we go downward along the beam cross section and we look at the another fiber small AC, it will also take a shape of here as A dash C dash in a circular arc. Here also there will be a decrease in the length of this fiber, but this decrease will be lesser in comparison to the top fiber. You see, all at the start the fiber AC and small AC, they both are of same length, but after deformation the A dash C dash, the top fiber, is smaller in comparison to the bottom fiber. So that means there is less compression of the fiber if we go along the cross section downward, and this will keep on happening. There will be lesser and lesser shortening of the fiber till we reach to the point RS fiber, where we will find that there is no change in the length even after the deformation. So RS is exactly equal to R dash S dash after the deformation. Hence there is no change in this fiber. This fiber where there is no change in the length is called as neutral axis, neutral fiber. Okay, and as we go below this neutral fiber, there is another fiber BD. We will find that it will get increased because of this deformation. So here it takes this shape B dash, small b dash L D dash, and this is bigger, larger in comparison to the BD. And as we go further, we will find the extreme, the bottommost fiber B dash D dash. This will have the longest increase in the dimension as compared to any other fiber in the beam. So what we see here is that below the neutral surface, neutral fiber, there is an increase in the length of the fibers, and it is happening because there is a tensile force acting on this beam. While when we go above the neutral fiber, there is a decrease in the length of fiber, and it is happening because of the compressive forces that are being induced and because of the applied bending moment. And the amount of stretch or compression in this fiber will depend upon the position of the layer with reference to the neutral fiber or neutral layer RS. Now let's analyze this particular element dx in a more detail. So we have a continuous beam here, a long beam here. We are analyzing a small portion of it, delta x. We see that all these fiber A, B, C, D, M, M1, N, N1, they are all of same length, that is equal to delta x. And let's consider a fiber CD which is at a distance of small y from the neutral axis or the neutral fiber we just discussed. Now this applied bending moment here, that will cause the beam to deflect in a circular shape, and it will acquire the shape as shown over here, and this fiber CD will get deformed in a circular arc C dash D dash, and as I have already discussed, this C dash D dash will be smaller in comparison to CD. So the strain produced in the fiber CD because of the applied bending moment can be given by C dash D dash, the final length, minus original length CD divided by the CD, the original length. So that is the strain. So change in the fiber length CD is C dash D dash minus CD divided by the original length CD. Mind it, this is a compressive strain, so a negative sign should precede over here in this expression. Now let's look at the bottom figure. So we see that there is a fiber E dash F dash situated at the neutral axis. Now this fiber E dash F dash, as it is converted into a circular arc, so we know that, let's define that the radius of this fiber from the center is given by capital R. So then theta, the angle which subtends at the center, can be obtained by arc divided by the radius E dash F dash divided by R. Now this E dash F dash is equal to the original length of the fiber EF before the deformation. So that's why E dash F dash by R will be equal to EF by R. And we know that as this neutral fiber has no change in length, so it is equal to the initial fiber length delta x. So this E dash F dash will be nothing but equal to delta x by R. Or I can write this expression as delta x equal to R theta, and as delta x is also equal to CD, I can write it delta x is equal to r theta equal to CD. Now let's look at the fiber C dash D dash. This C dash D dash fiber is located at a distance y from the fiber at neutral axis E dash F dash. So its radius will be r minus y. So therefore it can be expressed as C dash D dash is equal to r minus y into theta. And let's use this expression 2 and 3 and substitute in expression 1. We will obtain that strain will be equal to y by r. So what we see here is that strain is proportional to y. What is y? Y is the distance of the fiber from the neutral axis. So as you move away from the neutral axis, there will be higher strain produced, and as the stress is proportional to strain, therefore the fibers which are subjected farther away from the neutral axis will be subjected to higher amount of stresses. In fact, the fiber at the top and the bottom of most pole position will suffer the highest amount of strain, thus they will be having the largest amount of stresses in them. Now as we know that stress is proportional to strain, so stress can be written as strain times of modulus of elasticity. Using this expression, we can write the expression, means if we substitute the strain as y by r, you can get the relation sigma is equal to y by r into E, which you can also express as expression 4, sigma by y is equal to E by r. Now let's talk about the position of the neutral axis. The sum of all the compressive forces above the neutral layer must be equal to the sum of all the tensile forces below the neutral layer, because we have already made the assumption that the total beam is in equilibrium, that section is in equilibrium, that we have already assumed here. So the total sum of all the compressive forces which are above the neutral layer at each section must be equal to the sum of all the tensile forces below the neutral layer. Now let's consider a small elemental strip delta y. This is the cross section of the beam which is shown. I have just taken an arbitrary shape here. So let's take a small elemental length delta y, which is having area as delta A. Okay, so and it is situated at certain distance from the neutral axis, and the bottommost distance is given by yt, the fiber, and the topmost fiber which is subjected to compressive stress is given by yc. So just keep in mind that we are considering a small strip here which is of having area delta A and situated at a distance of small y from the neutral axis. Now the force which will be exerted because of this particular small strip that I have just shown you will be given by stress multiplied by the area of the strip. So if the sigma is the stress which is produced on this particular strip, then sigma dot delta A will be the amount of force that will be exerted here. And what kind of force that will be? Here in this case it will be compressive force, because it is situated above the neutral axis. So if I sum up all these such areas which are producing the compressive force, I need to take the summation sign of y is equal to 0, that means exactly from the neutral axis to the topmost fiber, y is equal to yc, and sum up all these forces sigma dot delta A. Similarly, I can sum up all the tensile forces by making the summation of the forces from neutral axis to the bottommost fiber, that is yt. Now as I have just told you that this beam section is in equilibrium, so totals of this sum of these compressive plus tensile forces should be equal to 0. So I can make the summation of both of these together, which gives me from y is equal to yt, bottommost fiber, to y is equal to yc, the topmost fiber, the summation of sigma dot delta A should be 0. Now as we have just discovered that sigma value is given by E by r into y from the expression 4, we substitute it over here, it will give us the expression as shown here, and as E by r is not dependent on y, I can bring it out here and I can write it as the expression E by r multiplied by the summation sign of y delta A equal to 0. And because this E by r is not equal to 0, so what is 0 is basically summation of y times of dot delta A should be equal to 0 if you sum it from the bottom to the top fiber. Now this expression 6 represents sum of all the moments of the elementary area about the neutral axis. So if you take those small strips there, and you also know the value of the distance of these elementary strips from the neutral axis y, and you multiply each of their distances with the corresponding area and sum up all over the entire section, then you will find that net sum is 0. So thus neutral axis is so located that moment of entire area about the neutral axis is 0. That is what we are getting. So this tells us about the position of the neutral axis. The neutral axis is located in such a way that the sum of the moment of all the elementary area about the neutral axis should be 0. But we also know this expression. This is the expression for locating the centroidal axis. So about the centroidal axis also, the sum of the moment of the area is 0. So therefore we can say that the neutral axis of a beam will always pass through the centroidal axis. So this is what we identify about the position of the neutral axis. The neutral axis will always pass through the centroidal axis. This is what we have just proved here. Now let's talk about the moment of resistance. As the applied bending moment is capital M, and as we have seen the section Mn, it is subjected to bending moment M. So this applied bending moment is resisted by an internal movement, and this internal movement is caused because of those forces of compressive and tension acting at some distances from the neutral axis. So we have the compressive forces acting all along the cross section, and similarly the tensile forces acting just below the neutral axis at all along the section, and they all are acting at a certain distance y from the neutral axis. So because of that, there will be internal resisting movement that will be created because of the forces acting at a certain distance from the neutral axis. So this internal movement is called as the moment of resistance, or MR, and let's find out the value of it. So consider a small area delta A. The force that will be acting on it, we just talked about, will be sigma times of delta A. And if we know that this delta A elementary strip is situated at a small y distance from the neutral axis, so the moment of the forces about the neutral axis will be force sigma delta A multiplied by the distance over which it is situated. So sigma delta A dot y will be giving the moment produced by this small strip delta A. Now as we know that sigma was given by the E by R into Y, we just derived, so I can substitute it E by R into Y here. So what I get is delta M is equal to E by R dot delta A dot Y square. Now to calculate the total moment of resistance, I need to sum up all the strips from bottom to the top fiber. So that's why MR will be equal to Y is equal to YT to YC E by R delta A Y square. I bring out the E by R outside. So what remains is E by R summation of YT to YC Y square delta A. This summation sign can be replaced by integral sign, and then we have this expression which is shown here in the equation 8. Now this expression which is an integral, it is called the second moment of area. Y dot delta is first moment of area. Y square dot delta is second moment of area, which is nothing but your moment of inertia. We also know this expression, and it is represented by capital I. It is represented by capital I. Now the integral expression is called second moment of area, and we substituted I here. So for equilibrium, MR is equal to M, and that's why we can say that M is equal to E by R into I. So that is the expression that we have got here. And now we see that we have already got sigma by Y is equal to E by R, and we substitute E by R is equal to M by I. So we can get expression is equal to sigma by Y is equal to M by I is equal to E by R. Okay. So this is our expression for the bending. Now let's talk about the curvature. Okay, what is curvature? Curvature is 1 by R. So from this expression 10 we can see that curvature is equal to M by EI. 1 by R is equal to M by EI. Okay, so we see that the curvature 1 by R is proportional to the bending moment. That means higher the bending moment, higher will be the curvature, and it is inversely proportional to EI, which is termed as flexural rigidity. Higher the value of flexural rigidity, lower will be the curvature. So beam will have less curvature in that case of higher flexural rigidity. Now at this point, let's understand the difference between the ordinary bending and a simple bending also. So when we talk about the we have just covered the case of simple bending. We are talking about the simple bending where we have the pure bending, only bending moment is present. But in case of ordinary bending, apart from the bending moment, there is a shear force also present. So we have just talked these relations that we have derived, they are related to the simple bending, in the case where there is only bending moment acting on the system. So in case of ordinary bending, the assumption that we have made that the plane cross section remains plane will not satisfy, and the plane cross section will distort because of the bending. So a circular shape may get converted into an ellipse and so on. Because of the absence of shear force, the plane cross section R is going to remain plane. Apart from that, we have also derived the relation that sigma by y is equal to E by R. So sigma is proportional to y. So that means the amount of stresses produced will depend upon the distance of the fiber from the neutral axis. So it is proportional, linearly proportional to that. So that's why this is the kind of stress distribution that you will get along the cross section of the beam.